Janelle Matthews was born on February 9, 1972, at Cottage Hospital in Santa Barbara, California. Her biological mother, Terry Vieira, was only 13 years old at the time. In March 1972, Janelle was adopted by James Jim and Gloria Matthews, a loving couple from Greeley, Colorado, who already had a daughter. At the time of her disappearance, Janelle's father was the principal of Platte Valley Elementary School in Kersey, Colorado. It was on December 20th, 1984, just 5 days before Christmas, when Janelle went missing. Earlier that evening, she had returned home after singing carols at a nursing home as part of a middle school choir concert. A friend's parent gave her a ride home, and she arrived to find an empty house. Around 8:30 p.m., Janelle entered the house, took off her shoes, and turned on the TV. She also switched on a space heater and answered a phone call, leaving a message for her father. Her father had been out watching her sister's high school basketball game and returned home about an hour later. To his surprise, the lights and TV were on, and Janelle's stockings were on the couch. However, Janelle herself was nowhere to be found. In the family room where Janelle often sat, her shoes and shawl were discovered near a heater. Her older sister, Jennifer, arrived home at 10 p.m., but she had not seen Janelle either. Concerned, their father contacted the police at that point. The police arrived at 10:15 p.m. and noticed footprints in the snow, indicating that someone had been looking into the windows. Despite the absence of signs of a struggle or forced entry, the police suspected foul play due to the circumstances. Massive search efforts were launched to find Janelle, and a reward of $5,000 was offered for any information leading to her safe return. Detectives diligently pursued thousands of leads, and Janelle's photo was distributed on flyers to 4,000 stores across the country. Even as time passed and hope dwindled, her case received national attention, with President Ronald Reagan mentioning her during a speech on missing children in 1985. However, the attention surrounding Janelle's family and friends eventually waned. Despite the lack of concrete evidence regarding her disappearance, the case gradually grew cold. Nevertheless, Janelle remained in the hearts and minds of those who cared about her. In the weeks following her vanishing, law enforcement discreetly placed Janelle's birth mother, Terry Vieira, under surveillance without disclosing the fact that Janelle was missing. In 1994, Janelle was legally declared deceased, yet her body remained undiscovered. Then, in 1997, Gloria Matthews received a letter from Vieira seeking permission to visit Janelle. Vieira had enlisted the help of a search consultant to locate her daughter. The Matthews family informed Vieira about the tragic turn of events, and the two families formed a bond. As time passed, Janelle's parents relocated to the Philippines, while her sister got married and moved away from Colorado. The mystery surrounding Janelle's disappearance perplexed both Greeley investigators and residents for over 3 decades, until a grim discovery shed light on the case. During the installation of a pipeline, workers stumbled upon human remains at 4:50 p.m. on Tuesday, July 23, 2019, near the intersection of county roads 34.5 and 49 at specific coordinates. Through DNA analysis, the Weld County Coroner's Office definitively identified the remains as belonging to Janelle Matthews. The forensic report determined that Janelle had died from a gunshot wound to the head. In September 2019, shortly after the discovery of Janelle's remains, the long cold case rapidly gained momentum. Authorities conducted a search of a residence in Twin Falls, Idaho, which belonged to Stephen Panky. Panky had lived just 2 miles away from Janelle at the time of her disappearance, and approximately 10 miles from where her body was eventually found. He attended the same church as Janelle's family, and was known to watch over children from her middle school as they walked home. Curiously, just 2 days after Janelle vanished, Panky embarked on an unexpected road trip to California, during which he obsessively listened to the radio for any news about her, as reported by his ex-wife to the authorities. After commencing excavation in his backyard, Panky's property experienced a vehicular inferno just a few days later, prompting him to dispose of the car. This series of events quickly garnered attention in the media, although not due to any official statements from the police. Instead, it was Panky himself who took it upon himself to engage in conversations with anyone willing to listen, including CBS affiliate KMVT. In his efforts to clarify his innocence, Panky emphasized that he had no involvement in the murder, stating, "It wasn't until December 26th, when my wife, her 5-year-old, and I returned from California to Colorado, that I first learned of Janelle Matthews' existence or disappearance. That was the first time I had any knowledge of it." He further emphasized that he had never met anyone from Janelle's family and made sure to highlight that he willingly provided his DNA and offered to undergo a polygraph test. However, the police did not directly confirm any of Panky's claims. During an interview conducted by Callie Worthman of CBS Denver over FaceTime, Panky expressed his concern about being framed, citing previous issues he had encountered with local law enforcement and fearing the possibility of facing baseless charges once again. Greeley Mayor and former police officer John Gates, who was acquainted with Panky, stated that Panky was not initially considered a person of interest when Janelle first went missing. Panky himself revealed that he and his family had left Greeley for 5 days the morning after Janelle disappeared. Approximately a month later, Panky unexpectedly inserted himself into the investigation, providing some information regarding Janelle's disappearance. According to Panky, his father-in-law, who worked as a groundskeeper at a Greeley cemetery, shared unsettling details with him 7 days after Janelle vanished. Allegedly, his father-in-law had been contacted by a police officer who claimed to have a body that needed to be buried. Panky explained to KMVT that he decided to share information with the FBI out of fear that he might be wrongly implicated in Janelle's murder. The story sounded quite unbelievable, and there was no way to verify if he actually visited the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Police records revealed that Panky had previous encounters with the Greeley police for unrelated issues, mostly involving minor offenses like causing a disturbance and harassment. Interestingly, the day before Janelle vanished, Panky was arrested at a bank for harassment and criminal trespass. On October 12, 2020, he was arrested for kidnapping and first-degree murder in connection with Janelle's case. Panky pleaded not guilty to these charges. His defense attorney at the time stated that there was no evidence linking him to the crime or the burial of the body. According to the attorney, Panky simply enjoyed being in the spotlight, and all his statements regarding his involvement were along the lines of, "I didn't do it." On October 13, 2021, Steve Panky's trial commenced. Prosecutors informed the jury that Panky had made self-incriminating remarks about Janelle's case over the years. One of the key witnesses, Panky's ex-wife, Angela Hicks, testified about her experiences during their marriage. She recounted being compelled to listen to news reports about Janelle's disappearance and shared details about discovering a note in Panky's trash. Among the writings on the legal paper was, "No outside Matthews' house was raked." Steve Panky took the stand after listening to the testimonies of multiple witnesses. He admitted that in the past, he had fabricated information about the case. "To be honest, I made up a lot of things out of bitterness. I was foolishly trying to appear important, but in reality, I had no knowledge of the matter," Panky stated. As early as 1999, Panky had already approached law enforcement seeking immunity in exchange for sharing any information he had regarding the killing. He wrote letters to the police detailing his alibi and even filed court cases discussing Janelle. On November 2, 2021, the jurors received the case, and within 2 days they reached a verdict. Although the jury found him guilty of providing false reports to authorities, they were unable to reach a unanimous decision on the kidnapping and murder charges. Consequently, the judge declared a mistrial for those counts. The prosecutors involved in this case have announced their intention to pursue a new trial for the charges of murder and kidnapping. Currently, Stephen Panky remains in custody, awaiting a new trial date. On the winter day of February 19, 1982, at approximately 5 p.m., law enforcement officers promptly responded to a distress call from a concerned neighbor regarding the Krauseneck residence at 33 Del Rio Drive in Brighton, New York. Upon entering the master bedroom of the family's home, the officers were confronted with a horrifying sight. Kathy Krauseneck, tragically struck with a single blow to the head by an axe, was discovered lifeless on her bed. The circumstances surrounding this brutal act of violence raise questions as to the motive behind the killing. Was the perpetrator someone known to Kathy, or was it an unfortunate incident stemming from a random robbery gone awry? Today's narrative unfolds in the serene town of Brighton, New York, situated in Monroe County near the southeastern border of Rochester. This charming suburban community has its own unique character and is cherished by its residents. To delve into Kathy Krauseneck's background, she was born as Kathleen Schlosser in Mount Clemens, Michigan in 1952. Growing up in a modest working-class family, Kathy was one of 7 siblings. Known for her vibrant personality and blonde locks, she was well-liked during her time at a Michigan high school. It was during this period that she crossed paths with James Krauseneck, a reserved, amiable, and athletic young man hailing from a prominent local family. Although only a year older than Kathy, their connection blossomed not only in high school, but also during their shared educational journey at Western Michigan University. Despite their contrasting natures and differing family backgrounds, love prevailed, and the couple embarked on a lifelong journey together. In May 1974, Kathy and James exchanged vows in a church ceremony in Mount Clemens. The following year, armed with her bachelor's degree and James with his newly acquired master's degree, they relocated to Fort Collins, Colorado. It was there that James pursued his PhD studies at Colorado State University. While Kathy experienced the heartache of a miscarriage shortly after their move, she later gave birth to their beloved daughter Sarah a few years down the road. James successfully completed his doctoral dissertation and commenced his teaching career at Lynchburg College in Virginia. Despite being referred to as Dr. Krauseneck at Lynchburg, it is worth noting that he had not officially received his doctoral degree. His thesis was sent back for revisions, and James neglected to resubmit his work. Kathy encouraged him to seek a more profitable career path to provide a better life for their family, but he hesitated, likely due to his lack of necessary qualifications. Despite his desperate attempts to secure a raise, his request was denied. Eventually, he accepted a position as an economist at Kodak, joining the Kodak family of 60,000 employees. With his new high-paying job and financial assistance from his parents, the Krausenecks purchased a new home on Del Rio Drive in the Rochester suburb of Brighton, New York, close to the Kodak headquarters. After settling into their new residence, Kathy enrolled Sarah in Queen of Peace Nursery School nearby and made some friends. She also signed Sarah up for dance classes. Despite feeling somewhat isolated during James's long work hours and Sarah's activities, Kathy never voiced any complaints. By early 1982, they seemed to be living the American dream. They had a charming 3-year-old daughter, a well-kept suburban home, and James's new lucrative economist position at Eastman Kodak. However, trouble was brewing. Kodak officials were doubtful of James's PhD, as he delayed providing proof of his degree. This, along with work stress, caused him to become distant from his family. Kathy confided in friends that he often returned home from work in a bad mood. The couple had been experiencing difficulties for some time. Kathy was reportedly upset because he had lied about completing his PhD, causing strain in their relationship. She even mentioned the possibility of taking Sarah and returning to their hometown. Despite this, there were no reports of domestic violence. Unfortunately, tragedy would soon strike the Krauseneck family. Upon the morning of February 19, 1982, merely 6 months subsequent to relocating to their new residence, officers from the Brighton Police Department were summoned to a 911 call. James Krauseneck arrived back home from his workplace to discover his 29-year-old wife Kathy's lifeless body nestled in bed in an upstairs bedroom, with their 3.5-year-old daughter Sarah gazing out of the window. Upon entering the residence, the officers encountered a horrific crime scene in the master bedroom. Kathy was found lying in a pool of blood in her own bed, with a long-handled axe lodged in her skull. The murder weapon was retrieved from the couple's unlocked garage. Sarah had been at home with her mother all day, but remained unharmed. When questioned about his whereabouts that day, James stated that his wife and daughter were sound asleep when he departed for work at approximately 6:30 a.m. that morning. He mentioned returning home at 5 p.m. before discovering his wife's body. James recounted grabbing his daughter and fleeing the house, seeking help from a neighbor. When questioned, young Sarah mentioned seeing a malevolent figure, but her father prevented further communication with the investigators. The crime scene did not yield many clues. Although signs of a burglary were evident, investigators sensed that something was amiss. A broken window was discovered, along with silver and jewelry neatly arranged both upstairs and downstairs, as if deliberately left behind by the intruder. In the dining room, 2 candelabra and a silver tea set were found upright near a plastic bag. A screwdriver was located on the stairs. Kathy's purse was scattered in the dining room. The family dog had been confined to the basement. Interestingly, no items were reported stolen, leading investigators to suspect that the burglary was staged. The medical examiner determined that Kathy's demise resulted from a single axe blow to the head and brain while she was asleep. The handle of the axe had been meticulously cleaned, leaving no trace of fingerprints or DNA. The time of death was narrowed down to a 2-hour window between 6:55 a.m. and 8:55 a.m., which effectively eliminated Kathy's husband James as a suspect. This chilling case quickly gained notoriety in the media and became known as the infamous Brighton Axe Murder. During the initial investigation, one of the suspects considered by the investigators was Ed Larrabee, a convicted killer and sex offender who happened to live near the couple's residence at the time. Interestingly, in 2014, while serving time for an unrelated murder, Larrabee shockingly confessed to killing Kathy Krauseneck. However, his confession didn't align with the evidence. Larrabee claimed the murder took place during the summer of 1981, when in reality it occurred in the winter of 1982. It turned out that Larrabee had a reputation for falsely confessing to crimes he hadn't committed, seeking attention and notoriety. Some of the victims he claimed to have murdered were actually alive and well. The investigators faced a daunting challenge as they lacked substantial physical or circumstantial evidence to connect anyone to the crime. Despite their tireless efforts, the Brighton Axe Murder remained an unsolved mystery for many years, haunting the community and leaving Kathy's family desperate for answers. In a shocking turn of events, just a day after Kathy's tragic passing, James abruptly returned to Mount Clemens with their daughter Sarah, without even notifying Kathy's grieving family. This sudden disappearance severed all contact between Sarah and her maternal relatives, leaving them heartbroken and bewildered. 4 years later, in 1986, James remarried. However, the marriage was short-lived, lasting only 9 months. While James claimed that he remarried to provide Sarah with a mother figure, his second wife believed that he ended the union due to a growing bond between her and Sarah. As the 1990s unfolded, James went on to marry 2 more times. He relocated to Washington and found success in his career, climbing the corporate ladder at a subsidiary of Weyerhaeuser. His professional journey took him to California and Georgia before he ultimately achieved the position of Vice President of Sales at the company's headquarters in Washington. Despite his tumultuous personal life, James seemed to have found stability and happiness with his 4th wife, Sharon. They enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle, seemingly leaving behind the shadows of the past. They purchased a beautiful 4-bedroom French country house in Gig Harbor near Tacoma. However, life took a different turn for Sarah as she moved to Texas and started her own family. Despite the distance, she remained closely connected with her father and stepmother. As the years went by, the case seemed to have hit a dead end until District Attorney Sandra Dorley and her team decided to dig deeper in 2015. They tirelessly searched for any evidence that might have been overlooked before. Among the discoveries was a delicate blue fiber made of glass, which originated from a shattered window in the house. Dorley attempted to match it with a previously untested blue knee sock found at the scene. Despite extensive testing, no DNA from an external source was found, effectively eliminating the possibility of an outside killer. The focus then shifted to Kathy's husband James as the prime suspect. However, charging him solely based on circumstantial evidence was not an option, and there was another obstacle to overcome. The timeline of Kathy's death placed James outside of the house at the time of the murder, seemingly ruling him out as a suspect. Nevertheless, Dorley and her team were determined not to let him off the hook so easily. They sought the expertise of renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden, who had played a crucial role in numerous high-profile cases. After thoroughly examining all the relevant documents, including police reports, autopsy reports, photographs, and other evidence, Baden reached a significant conclusion. Contrary to the original medical examiner's findings, he believed that Kathy had died before James left for work that morning. Baden pointed out that the partially digested food in her stomach and the stage of rigor mortis her body was in indicated an earlier time of death. The initial examiner had observed rigor mortis setting in the evening of the crime, but Baden explained that it takes at least 12 hours for a body to reach that level of rigor mortis. Therefore, he concluded that the murder must have occurred between 9 p.m. the previous evening and 3 or 4 a.m. on the morning of the crime. In 2019, James Krausneck was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife based on Dr. Baden's analysis and other evidence. His trial commenced in August 2022. The defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial and suggested that Larrabee, who had already passed away, could have been responsible for Kathy's death. However, the prosecutors contended that there was no evidence of an intruder, the robbery was staged, and James was the only plausible suspect, especially considering their young daughter remained unharmed despite being present at the scene. Ultimately, the jury sided with the prosecution, leading to James Krausneck's conviction for second-degree murder. Despite this, his daughter Sarah, who is now 41 years old, continues to support her father and does not believe he had any involvement in her mother's murder. Conversely, after enduring 40 years of grief, Kathy's family finds solace in the fact that justice has finally been served. Annette Schlosser, Kathy's sister, shared with Spectrum News that their mother passed away without ever knowing who took her daughter's life, describing their experience as living in a state of torment. Annette firmly believes that no one could commit such a heinous act against her sister. However, Kathy's 95-year-old father was present in court to witness James being held accountable for his daughter's horrific murder. Now, the Schlosser family's sole desire is to reconnect with Kathy's daughter, as they have had no contact with her for several years. They express their hope that they can all find healing together after enduring this tragic incident. James Krausneck was eventually sentenced to 25 years to prison by a judge. However, 6 months later, he died in his cell. This tale revolves around Lori Nessen, a 15-year-old girl who tragically lost her life in 1974. For almost 5 decades, the identity of her killers remained shrouded in mystery until 2021, when they were finally apprehended. The resolution of this cold case was made possible through the combined efforts of scientific advancements, relentless detective work, and a crucial tip prompted by a media report. Lori, a bright student at Eastmore High School in Columbus, Ohio, had aspirations of becoming a lawyer and advocating for the vulnerable. However, her dreams were abruptly cut short. On the fateful night of September 27, 1974, after attending various social gatherings with her classmates, Lori decided to walk home alone. Despite offers for a ride, she declined, as her destination was merely a short distance away. Tragically, instead of reaching her home, She was discovered the next morning unclothed in a desolate roadside ditch on Rose Hill Road in Reynoldsburg. Her mother had already reported her missing by that time. Lori's body exhibited signs of bruising and assault, and her scattered clothing spanned several miles along the road. Initially, her death was not classified as a homicide, but rather as asphyxiation by unknown means. Although investigators recognized that Lori had been smothered and physically attacked elsewhere, they lacked substantial evidence to take further action. After conducting interviews with Lori's classmates due to her young age and last known whereabouts, authorities discovered that a red car may have been linked to her or following her. Despite recovering Lori's clothes from a rural county road months ago, the lack of advanced technology hindered the extraction of DNA evidence. Despite following up on every lead diligently, the case eventually went cold due to a lack of connections and an undetermined cause of death. The authorities were unable to obtain warrants in this situation, and subsequent reviews in 1998 and 2007 yielded no progress due to insufficient evidence and limited DNA testing capabilities. It wasn't until 2019 that Reynoldsburg patrol officer Craig Bradford's intuition led to the case being reopened. After uncovering inconsistencies that pointed to foul play in Lori's death, Officer Bradford presented the evidence to the Franklin County Coroner's Office in September 2020, resulting in Lori Nessen's death being officially classified as a homicide. Lori's family had suspected foul play all along, with her sister, Toni Hastings, emphasizing the need for justice. The case took a significant turn in December 2020 when a news station shared an article on Lori's case, prompting a tip that could potentially change the course of the investigation. Following the broadcast, Police Sergeant Jim received a crucial phone call from a cousin of the late Karen Adams, whose tragic story bore striking similarities to Lori Nessen's case. 17-year-old Karen Adams was tragically murdered 6 months after Lori on March 9, 1975. She vanished while on her way to a friend's house. The following day, Karen's lifeless body was found in a ditch in Blacklick, Ohio, just under 4 miles from Reynoldsburg. Similar to Lori's case, Karen's murder remained a mystery for many years. Sergeant Jim contacted the investigator who successfully cracked Karen's case in 2011 using cutting-edge forensic technology, which ultimately revealed Karen's killers as Robert Meyer and Charles Weber. Robert Meyer from Cincinnati and Charles Weber from Columbus were both known sexual predators who not only resided together at the time of the crime, but also drove a red vehicle. This, combined with the positive DNA matches, conclusively proved their guilt in Lori Nessen's murder. By the time Karen's perpetrators were identified, Charles Weber had already passed away. On the other hand, Robert Meyer, now 70 years old, was apprehended and sentenced to 15 years in prison for the murder of Karen Adams. He breathed his last behind bars at the age of 74 in 2015, 3 years after his conviction. In 2021, Lori's loved ones gathered to commemorate her life, an event that Gene Adams, Karen Adams' brother, also attended. Prior to this, Lori's sister Toni paid a visit to Lori's grave to share the news of the killer's identification and to assure her that justice had been served. I truly hope that this paves the way for other cases, for other families who are still seeking answers. No one should have to endure a 46-year wait, Toni Hastings expressed in a statement to the press.